It's the question that's been roiling the Trump base for months. What's in the Epstein files? Well, on Friday, members of Congress will start to find out. Lawmakers on the House Oversight Committee will get the first tranche of documents from the Jeffrey Epstein case following a subpoena to the Justice Department. Joining us now is a member of the House Oversight Committee, Virginia Democratic Congressman Suhas Subramaniam. Just yesterday, he sat in a closed-door deposition with the president's former attorney general, Bill Barr, over exactly this, the Epstein files. Congressman, it's good to have you here. First of all, what do you hope to get out of these documents? Do you expect any big revelations?
I want to know, first of all, what people have been asking for, which is basically, why is, Jeffrey Epstein, why was he given a sweetheart deal all those years ago? What happened with his suicide? And what's his association with the president of the United States? The president has denied a longstanding friendship at times. At other times, he's admitted to it and said that they had a falling out. But I want to know exactly what the president's role was in his entire scheme. And I know the victims also. This is what it's really about. The victims, really want some answers as well. And so I think we owe it to the American people who want transparency, and we owe it to the victims to do our job on the Oversight Committee and provide real oversight over this administration.
So I think there are two different things, right? And we certainly have talked to some of the victims. We've talked to victims' families. We've talked to people who have spent a lot of time investigating exactly what went down and all the things that you're talking about. One is full transparency, right? One would be, okay, here's what's in them. The other is a belief that there might be something there. There might be something nefarious. There might be something more, a lot of which some folks have classified as conspiracy theories. Is there anything that you have seen or you believe might suggest that there is something in there that has an answer to those questions that we don't have right now?
I'm a member of Congress on the Oversight Committee, and yet I've gotten very few answers from this administration as well. This president and many in this administration spent all of last year promising the American people that they would release the full unredacted Epstein files with lists. They said that over and over again. And then earlier this year, they said they would do that as well. But then we're told that President Trump was told that he was in the files, and there hasn't been that transparency that they promised to the American people. And so, we do deserve answers, and we do deserve full transparency. And the only way we're going to get full transparency is if they release the files unredacted to the American people, and not piecemeal, selective files to members of Congress behind closed doors. I think the American people want and deserve more answers than just this piecemeal drip that they're supposedly promising now.
You were one of the two Democrats in the room yesterday for Bill Barr's deposition. You said you have more questions now than you did before he got in the room. Does that mean that you found the testimony useful? And by that, I mean it led you to other possible areas of investigation? Or do you think he knows something he's not telling you?
Without getting the details, I'll say that I really wanted to talk to Alex Acosta. I think, he was the one that created the sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein back in 2007. He was a part of the Trump administration and worked with Attorney General Barr and the Trump administration. And so it was very, very suspicious that he was not included in the list of subpoenas. And I would like to see him included now as well, given Attorney Barr's testimony. The other thing I would say is we had the wrong Attorney General in the room. Pam Bondi should be before this committee, and she should be testifying as to what she had on her desk that she claimed were the full Epstein files with lists, and why she wouldn't and still has not released the full unredacted files. In the end, I think the most useful thing for everyone would be if Pam Bondi came before us and if this administration released the unredacted files.
Congressman Subramaniam, thank you so much. We do appreciate your time.